Hey folks, I just want you all to know that I feel like I've been a little too lenient with the rating system, not just on Stars Align, I mean that across all shows. So I'm going to be a little bit more strict with the ratings, which should probably tell you how I felt about this week's episode. It's not all bad, I promise, just bear with me. But before we get into things, I do want to say a big thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter. At FoxTun2X, at FireOtaku845, at iLovely, at NicoNeeks, at Sakochi Anime, at Kisachan94, and at #Naoto. Thanks so much for sharing last week's video, everybody, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Stars Align finale, friendly reminder that that's a thing, then be sure to share this video around on the internet and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I'm nervous, because every time I talk negatively about a show, people think that I suddenly hate it. And that's not the case. Although I will say that the Stars Align group who watches these videos have been very understanding. They know, or at least I'm saying, talking about you guys like you're in the third person. You all know that when I'm talking about the show, the reason why I'm critiquing it, if I ever feel the need to critique it, it's because I feel like they can be doing something better. And I know that Akane has done great works like Escaflowne. Keep in mind, we're talking about Kazuki Akane. The man made Escaflowne. I know he can do great stuff. But if I ever critique it, it's not because I think it's bad or trashy or I don't like it. It's because I do like it, I see the potential, and I wish it could be just that little bit better. And this episode is the prime example of that, because holy crap, and I'm really trying to hold back my frustration, this episode is so fast. Like, it is so... That's the problem with the show in a nutshell, and it only gets progressively more fast as we carry on. It just gets... The pacing is so bad. The pacing... And I'm realizing it as I'm saying it, that's the case. That the pacing in the show is terrible, and honestly holds the show back from being this A-tier phenomenal show with a great message behind it. Instead, it's more like a B-tier show with a good message behind it. And that bums me out, because I really do feel like the characters here are its strongest thing. Like, the best part about this show is that the characters are all so strong, but it comes at this breakneck speed, and it comes at the cost of the show actually holding up on its own outside of a great cast. And I do think the cast is great. I think the seiyus are great. I think they really flesh out these characters. I think Akane clearly has a vision for all of these characters, but it's so much, so fast. I really think Akane should have come up with a concept, come up with the character ideas, and then get somebody else to be the series composer, because he can't, like, he's putting too much, too fast, and it came at the cost of what should have been a shining moment for the show, and that's this whole spring tournament thing. Actually, I don't even know if that's the correct name for the tournament, because we've had no build-up for the tournament. It was just sort of thrown at us, and I'm like, oh, okay, tournament arc, cool. And in most other shows, especially sports anime, a tournament arc is meant to be the culmination of all these storylines. And let's face it, I saw people saying, this is the one time I did, out of curiosity, look up what people were saying, and I saw a lot of folks saying, like, well, they're building towards season 2. This show is not that popular. I do think it's pretty popular, but I don't know if it's season 2 worthy. I hope it does get a season 2, because if it gets a season 2, all my issues with the show, well, not all my issues, but a big chunk of my issues are resolved, because this didn't seem like a 2-season show to me. This seemed like a one and done, but apparently people seem to think that it's getting a season 2 based off this episode. I actually just think that the episode had really poor pacing and was way too fast for its own good. I don't think it's getting a season 2, because if it was getting a season 2, they could have just stopped prior to the tournament arc and then have season 2 be this big tournament. You could have done so much here. You could have fleshed out these characters more. You could have given Arashi more scenes. You could have wrapped up and resolved these characters' issues at the tournament, where most shows typically wrap up a lot of character arcs. What is resolved here? Nothing. This is the second last episode. I don't want to be mad at the show. I don't want to be mad at Akane, and I'm not mad. I'm just... I hate to be a parent, but I'm just disappointed. Because you know what? The more I think about it, the more I realize that there's issues with the show that I wouldn't have noticed, rather, if if I wasn't being pulled out of it. There's this saying, right, where if you're doing a good job at a puppet show, the people watching the puppet show won't notice the strings. But if you're doing a bad job, their mind will wander and they start noticing the strings and they start noticing that it's not real. And that's my issue with Stars Align here, is the fact that it's going so fast, it's doing too much too quickly, to the point where I just stopped caring about a lot of these problems. Like, now I've given up on entirely. Like now's character is just fucked. Like, I don't know what they're doing with Now. He flip-flops, and I get like, oh, but that's realistic. Yeah, but you're watching a TV show where there's character arcs, and there's, I'm sorry to say, there's rules to storytelling. And Now's character is just like, I don't even know what the hell they're doing with Now. He's just a mess. And I get it, he is actually supposed to be a mess. But the flip-floppy, like, oh, I was trying to stop us from being a team, now I want us to be a team. Where did that come from? Watching two other people play soft tennis? He's been doing that this entire time. Not during his own match? Why was that during someone else's match, offhanded, on the sidelines? That should have been during his match. What the hell? And that resolution was not a resolution. I hope that's a stopgap. I'm really, really hoping and praying that this does get a season 2, because I feel like a season 2 could fix so much of Stars Align. Not that Stars Align is broken necessarily, but just like it could touch things up. If you got a season 2, you could ease some of the pacing, you could slow down, and you could really fix a lot of these issues, because I do feel like if there is a season 2, you can fill in some of these gaps and explain why characters are suddenly jumping to these crazy conclusions and things are like suddenly wrapping up. Like Now just being like, oh yeah, I just like soft tennis now. I've always liked soft tennis actually. And it's like, oh, okay. What was that whole thing with Anne where you were trying to like break up the team? Like, I know you were in a difficult place at that moment, and I guess watching your friends play the same game that you were just playing somehow changed that. And again, I'm not talking about real life situations here. I am talking about the fiction presented to me. And if I'm looking at it, I can't help but notice the strings. And normally I don't do that. Normally I don't really care about the structure of a story, I just care about the story that is presented to me. And here, I can't help but notice the structure because it's not clicking with me and I'm trying to understand why. So when I'm trying to understand why it's not clicking, then I start to nitpick and notice these little things. And I can't help but notice how poorly paced this is. Now's character desperately needs fixing. Like that character needs to have their plot resolved properly, not offhanded. And I'm sure people are gonna be like, yeah, but season 2, you don't know if there's gonna be a season 2. So you have to have some kind of resolution. Doesn't have to be permanent, doesn't have to be the end game, just has to be a stopping point. That was not a stopping point. That felt, Now suddenly changing his mind felt way too out of nowhere. And I know I've been harping on Now, but it's just, that's how the episode opened, and it just tainted the rest of the episode for me, because I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I want to say that at least the match was fun, but even then I was so sort of like in my own head and sort of annoyed by the Now thing that I couldn't help but notice that Takahashi's animation direction, he's the chief animation director, so he should be noticing these things. There is a lot, and I mean a lot, of recycled animation. Now that's normally not a bad thing, but it is noticeable. If you're gonna recycle animation, you should try to kind of hide it. Give the same animation to other characters. Don't just give Arashi the same serve he's been doing this entire show. Don't just do the same movements over and over and over again. It got to the point where some of the matches, honestly, were kind of boring. Shows like Haikyuu, they reuse animation, sure, but they'll give it to different characters, they'll do a little bit more with it, and each time they'll also give you something new in each match. I feel like I haven't seen anything new since the Arashi match from like 6 episodes ago. We also had a clip show, speaking of recycled animation. We had a moment where they replay scenes from previous episodes, however, the difference is, that felt appropriate to me. That felt like, yeah, that makes sense. Although even then I had an issue, because the whole like Joy versus Maki and Toma thing, I felt like that had already been done and done better. Once again, say it with me, with the Arashi match. Sorry, not tournament. I'm getting flustered now. It was done, the same sort of thing was done with the Arashi match, and I mean like almost beat for beat the same. And I just think it was done better in the Arashi match because it was the first time we were seeing a lot of that animation, the first time we were seeing a lot of those story beats, first time we were seeing a big match between Toma and Maki versus this like really intense competitor. Only this time, miraculously enough, they actually do pull out a victory against Joy and his partner. And I feel I get what they were going for with Joy, where he was supposed to be this jerk character who's kind of entertaining at the same time, but I don't know if it was the Seiyu's fault, or I don't know if it was the direction, or if it was the writing, but something about that was not clicking for me, and he just kind of came off as I really think it's the Seiyu, honestly, and I hate to say it. I don't know who the Seiyu is. I don't have them written down. I didn't bother to look it up. Because I don't know who it was, but I was sort of unimpressed. It may have been the writing itself, but the lines they were given and their delivery was just sort of like, eh. So if he was supposed to be an entertaining jerk, it didn't quite work out. Still, the whole point of that match to me was the metaphor of being on your own versus being in a group. Like, the whole point of Maki and Toma's relationship, as well as the whole purpose of the show, is to show that you can find comfort in others, and finding a group that you can be with can sometimes ease those burdens and make life worth living just that little bit more. And having friends is truly this beneficial thing. I know everybody is probably rolling their eyes because it's like the shonen shit of friendship is power, but it kind of is. And I like the idea of having somebody you can confide in, right? Like that pairs, like that, and that's the thing. That's why it had to be soft tennis. Like, you could have done another sport where it's pairs. Like, you could have done beach volleyball if you wanted to. I don't know. But it had to be something where there's pairs. Or you could have done this with a team, but I don't think it would have worked as well. I think it had to be pairs. And I think the whole effectiveness of this match is that it's showing that being on your own, even if you think you're king shit, it doesn't always mean much because you don't have anybody you can rely on. Toma and Maki have each other. They can rely on each other, so they're able to overcome the odds. Whereas Joy doesn't really rely on his partner. In fact, I don't even know his partner's name. But Joy seems like this larger-than-life character. He has all these people cheering for him, these girls going crazy for him. He's this big wall of a player, you can't get past him. But when you start to single him out from the crowd, when you attack his partner instead of him, he has no comeback. And even then, the last point is scored against him. It was the ultimate ego blow. And it's because he was facing off against pairs. And it's that whole thing of it's better to stand with somebody you can confide in than stand alone. And I do think that's a great message. However, it was already done with Arashi. And I feel like Arashi's partner and him grew more than Joy does. Joy just kind of goes I guess I'll join the table tennis team. Her. And it's just this sort of okay, I guess. I feel like Arashi's match was done better because it's the same message, but Arashi also takes it on and he grows, so you're not just growing two characters and throwing away this rival character. You're growing two characters and then two others on the side. Not only do the protagonists learn a lesson, but their rivals, the antagonists in that specific episode, they also learn a lesson. And I just felt like the Arashi match was done better. It just felt like a repeated story beat because they needed some kind of ultimate sort of this emotional release for the penultimate episode leading into the finale. And I don't fault them because that is such a great message, and it's part of the reason why I like the show is because the message is great. But I just feel like it was done better with the Arashi match myself. Even Arashi in this, like I said, it's just recycled animation. He doesn't really get a lot to do. He is berating the other team, which I thought was kind of funny, and even the ref's hey man, knock it off. He's I was talking to myself. I thought that was kind of funny. They gave him a fun little moment, but that's about it. And he does say you're 200%, 200% hell no, you're not beating those two. And then I guess they just kind of lose, and it's okay, but it doesn't matter since, the team won 3 matches, I believe, going into the semifinals. So they did pretty well. So it's not like the club's going to get shut down or anything. So that's cool. And we actually see that the student council president was there, which I thought was really cool. I was happy to see her there. I want more of her character. I actually wanted her to talk to Toma and be hey man, congrats, or something. And yeah, I think that moment for Maki and Toma was great. My only other issue with the episode, because the rest is all stuff that I liked, so if you enjoyed this episode and you didn't like me trashing it, get ready, because we're going to talk about some fun stuff. But the only other thing that I didn't really enjoy about the episode is that the whole episode, like I said, like the vibe that I was getting is that it like you stand as a team, like you stand together, dominant with a friend, right? But everybody's just cheering for Maki. And I felt like that was supposed to, like, it looked as though we were giving Toma this complex where he's being outshined by the guy who he brought in. So I thought that was going to have some kind of repercussion. Like, everybody cheering for Maki is what makes the two of them, like, lose to Joy, but that's not what ends up happening. So I was kind of like, okay, that doesn't feel, it should have been like Maki, Toma, not just Maki. It just didn't feel right. However, the scene with Toma having the flashback where his mom is saying, like, you'll never be as good as him, I thought that scene was really good. It was sort of weirdly placed in the episode since there's no, like, it's not like he's dreaming or having some sort of flashback. We don't really, it just sort of happens. You're like, oh, okay. But that scene does paint a lot of what's been going on with Toma under a different light. I thought it was that he was jealous of Maki. I still think that he's jealous of Maki. But it's also that he's jealous of his brother. He really has this sort of identity complex. Like, he's not even really sure, I think, who he is. And I feel like if there is a season 2, you can explore that. Do it slowly. But I do think that Toma hugging Maki is sort of a nice little moment to be like, yeah, he doesn't, like, hate Maki or anything. He's a little jealous of him, but I don't think he hates Maki. That'd be silly. Obviously not, after all the stuff that he's done for Maki and that Maki's done for him. And that hug, bro, that I was like, yes. Like, seeing them win was great. Seeing them win was such a shock. I didn't see it coming at all. And I was, like, pleasantly surprised. I was like, cool, good on you. Like, Akane coming in with the swerves. I thought that was great. I thought the scene of the two of them hugging was fantastic. Everybody running in and celebrating and everything. It was a great moment. All they did was win one match, but that's all they had to do, and then they did it. And then they kept winning up until they went up against the twins, who, by the way, were named Riku and Sora. And yeah, I know that it's land and sky. I know. But Riku and Sora, really? And don't take that as an insult, by the way. For a second, I was like, somebody's a Kingdom Hearts fan, and then I was just like, no, because their names mean something else, but either way, it's a fun little moment for me. I was just like, oh, yeah, Riku and Sora, that's kind of funny. You know what else I love, too? Mitsue. Mitsue's kind of, like, Mitsue's had this slow arc of, like, not wanting to admit that she enjoys watching the gang play soft tennis, and she's always been sort of like, this is dumb, that's stupid, you're dumb, like, this whole sport is dumb, this is boring, blah, 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 I don't want to be here, even though I'm clearly want to be here. But then, at the end, when she's like, this is awesome, I was like, yeah, Mitsue! Aw, man, Mayu Mineta is perfect. That Seiyu choice was great. I think, like, she just totally matches Mitsue so well. I want to see what Mineta does after this. I have to be very careful to say Mineta and not Mineta. Very different people. But yeah, I'm excited to see what her Seiyu does after this, because I thought that little, like, this is awesome, the way it was delivered. And all of Mitsue's lines, honestly, I think Mitsue might be one of my more favorite characters in the show, just because she feels, she's an artist, right? So we're not in the same wheelhouse, but the comments that she gets, the way she feels about herself, that was me in high school, like, straight up. Like, I was very much like Mitsue. So I relate pretty damn heavily to Mitsue. And even our attitude is kind of similar, which I kind of hate to admit. Like, I mean, back in high school, I feel like I'm a lot more of a cheerier person these days. But I did relate. I really relate to Mitsue quite a bit. So seeing her slow growth, I was like, yay! I was like a proud dad, you know? I was like, yeah! Well, I'm not that old. Maybe I was a proud Oni-chan. Very proud of Mitsue. Very, very proud of her in that moment. I thought that was great. I was almost more proud for Mitsue saying this is awesome than I was for the team, which says something. I also loved that Taki-sensei is like, oh my god, they won! If Mitsue was me in high school, Taki is me now. Where I was just like, holy crap, they won! I was like, that moment was great. And I loved his, like, later on, he's just like, a round of applause for Maki and Toma, and everybody gives this, like, half-ass, like, yeah. And he's like, what was that? And everyone's like, dude, we're really tired. Like, half of us were just playing the game, and then the other half were already cheered our asses off. Like, we're tired, man. Taki's like, aw. Like, again, I thought the celebration, the victory, everything about it was great. There's only one more thing I have in my notes that I want us to talk about. And that is And this is the juicy, this is the pièce de résistance. This is about Rintaro and his mom, and I was wrong. It's not Maki's mom. I'm like 90% sure it's Toma's mom. What else could that scene at the end have meant? I really think that scene at the end was Toma's mom saying like, I have to tell him he has a twin, or something like that. The fact that she had to give up one of them and kept the other one, like that may have like some residual, like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. So that could be her, like that could be why she's reacting this way. Maybe she's going to get help. Maybe it's that she's talking to I can't remember Toma's brother's name now. Maybe it's that she's talking to him because she's telling him that she's gonna go get some help because the things she said she knows was hurtful. Maybe that's it. I don't want to go with that because I'm sorry, but the tea's just not as strong as the other one. Sometimes I just like a crazy ass drama, okay? And like, listen, if I'm right, and Rintaro's mom is actually Toma's mom, and the two of them are brothers, ooh, that's juicy. I'm like, oh, that's such a good twist. If that's true, genius. Like, cause that'd be good because we've already seen that Rintaro and Toma relied on each other prior to Maki being introduced to the group. You could do so much with that. You could, like, that's such a good idea. This is another reason why I'm hoping that there's a season 2, because that is such a good idea to the point where that can't be it. It's, again, I'm hoping and praying that there's a season 2. And if there is, Akane, listen to me. You take your gosh darn time with it. Take your time and you hire a screenwriter. I'm sorry, man, but you need another writer on board with you, okay? Like, you need somebody to help you pace this shit out. Like, if there's a season 2, get another writer, pace it out, take your time, because you can go places with season 2. You can really flesh these characters out even more than you already have, because I know you care about these characters, Akane. Like, I know you care. So get somebody who can help you flesh them out properly. Get a good writer. You have a lot of connections. You made Escaflowne, for fuck's sakes. Like, don't tell me you don't have connections. You can get a solid writer on board for this. I know you can. And I know if there's a season 2 that you can really flesh this out. If there's not, I don't know if this series will be remembered that fondly. This is a show that really needs a season 2. Very desperately. I'm hoping to see like some sort of like next season or like something like that at the end. A lot of people have pointed out that there's like a to be continued shirt that Maki wears from time to time. Like, maybe that's them trying to hint like, yes, there's gonna be a season 2. I feel like that's a stretch, but like at the same time, I can understand where those folks are coming from. I do think this show really could benefit from a second season to flesh out these characters, because I think right now it's sitting at like a B tier show when it really should have been an A. So I'm gonna wrap up my thoughts here, and again, I would like to remind you all that I am being way more strict than I used to be with my ratings, because I feel like I've gotten way too lax. So while normally I would have given this episode a B, I'm gonna give it a C, because honestly, I really did think it was okay. I thought there's a lot of stuff they did right. I also think there's a lot of stuff that they did wrong, or well, not so much wrong, but just a lot of stuff that didn't mesh with me. I'm not trying to say that I'm like the arbiter of anime. These videos are just my opinion. So with me, it's okay. I didn't think it was my favorite episode, which is a little unfortunate since it is the penultimate episode, but I do think they have a lot of room to grow. Hopefully they do get a second season, and if they don't, hopefully they can stick the landing next week. And that's gonna do it for today's video, everybody, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Before we go, as always, I have to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier: Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Ionos, Urza, Ginkotaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Sukochi, Tristan, and Verdun. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon. It is so appreciated. And if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But with all that said, everybody, I am going to take off. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea. And I will talk to you all again real soon.